Yay! What is up, everybody? Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 221. Whoa. Wowie. Whoa-wee wowie. I apologize about my striped shirt. Apparently, it is so striped that I'm going what's called McRae.
This is a rule that you taught me about
early on,
years
breaking
ago.
my own rule. And I saw it before the show, and I was like, you know what? I'm not going to change. I want to be an optical illusion tonight. So that's what my shirt's doing. How about yours? Welcome to the show. Very excited about tonight's episode. I think this is our first episode dealing and talking to guests about Badwater. Yeah. We've talked about it on the show, like in passing.
We've had people on the show that have said this is their bucket list
race, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But tonight we're joined by two individuals with vastly different stories from Badwater. I'm calling the episode A Tale of Two Badwaters. I'm going to give myself a little pat on the back because it's a great sentence. The reality is our two guests are some of the best ultra runners in the world. They've accomplished some of the most difficult ultra marathons on the planet. From Hurt 100, AC 100, Western States, just across the board, UTMB, stuff across the planet. They've traveled far and wide. And this, it's not this last weekend, it was actually last week. It actually takes place kind of in the middle of the week or early on in the week. They participated in, Badwater 135. What is Badwater refers to themselves as the world's toughest foot race. We're going to find out, is that true? I think so, based off of this year's results and how the race went down. But we're going to talk to both Yassine Diboun and Sally McRae. We're joined by these two incredible humans to talk about Badwater.
I also just wanted to quickly chime in. There's people in the chat room that are saying my mic is off and that I'm echoing and they cannot hear me. So can you guys confirm if you can hear me in the chat room?
I just turned Kim's mic on.
And that's marriage.
You guys can't hear our guests right now. You can't hear Sally or Yassine, but they're laughing in the background because they realize that I, in fact,
muted me.
I did.
It must have been that big fight we were having.
It was this huge fight beforehand. I was like,
shirt.
I am going to mute her mic tonight. It
All
just
right,
makes me look
guys.
bad.
The chat room always has my back.
Yes. So Yassine, Sally, the audience couldn't hear you, but hilarious. Because you guys are laughing, and I'm like, they can't hear them laughing. So it is hilarious on our end. So sorry about that. Kim's mic is now on. I'm glad that this happened before we actually went into the show.
Yes.
That's what we use for the podcast. So let us know if I need to ride Kim's volume here because I need to turn it up or down. I don't get the chance to monitor Kim's volume here, but throughout the show, just let us know. Of course, Kim was in the chat room too. So I'm going to turn Kim up a little bit just because I know I talk loud.
I'm just going to turn yours off a little bit.
The thing is, I talk so loud, your mic would easily pick up my voice. Okay. Welcome, everyone, to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 221. Sit back, relax. Thank you for joining us tonight. Here we go. The show begins now. Ginger Runner.
Yay!
What is up, everyone? Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 221. Thank you for taking time out of your busy Mondays to spend a little bit of it with us. On tonight's episode, I believe in the post-show, what I realized is that this is the first episode that we have done live that deals primarily with Badwater 135, the world's toughest foot race, as they call themselves. Which is a surprise. We've had guests on who have run it before, guests who are planning on running it, but we haven't actually talked about the event right after it occurred. And tonight we're joined by two incredible ultramarathoners, people who have run some of the most difficult races on earth, from UTMB, Western States, Hurt 100, AC 100, just, across the gamut. And they both participated in last week's Badwater 135 with different results. So this is the episode titled A Tale of Two Badwaters. We're joined by
That's a great title.
I appreciate the compliment very much so. Our guests tonight are Yassine Diboun, I believe coming to us live from Portland, Oregon, and Sally McRae, who's coming to us from the desert. We'll introduce them here in just a second. Before we get into the main show, we do have some people to thank for our ability to even do these shows live every Monday. That is our Patreon supporters. The vast majority of you are incredible people. There's a small percentage that are not. I don't know why that sentence is how that was formatted.
You're doing great today. You started with the shirt, then my mic, and then this.
You know who you are, who are like crushing it. Thank you, Patreon supporters, for supporting us in what we do here. 3 individuals in particular at the top tier allow us to do this week in and week out, month after month. Wow, I am not going to live that one down. And that is live and recorded. That is going into the podcast.
Yep.
Sweet, Ethan, know what you mean.
That is... Welcome to the Badwater episode. It's already hot in our room. That's what's going on.
Yeah.
It's the heat.
See,
wave.
that's what does to your brain, you know?
It
Yeah.
does. It messes with your brain. So 3 individuals from our Patreon crew that we like to thank week in and week out. Chris Lee from Hong Kong. He's an incredible individual that supports the trail running community there with the organization known as Trailblazer. Not only do they raise a lot of money for charity, they raised $10,000 very recently by screening Where Dreams Go to Die. All that money went to charity. They also showcased those trails. If you're visiting Hong Kong or looking to race in Hong Kong, Chris Lee and his whole organization are incredible. He's a great ultra runner himself, actually coming to North America. I think we get to meet him in person in a couple of days. I'm very excited about that. So hopefully we'll like snap some pics and stuff, be able to share that with you guys. Also, Rick Bjarnason and his team at cheekymonkeymedia.ca. They're a web design company out of British Columbia. Rick is an ultra runner. He just recently attempted Sinister 7 and is about to run Fat Dog 120, one of the toughest big ultras here on the West Coast. Super gnarly out in the backcountry of British Columbia. But he and his team are web designers, and they're currently redesigning the gingerrunner.com website. Very excited about that. We'll unveil that here also very soon. And finally, Brian Sands, longtime viewer, longtime supporter. Brian has an incredible story, has lost over 100 pounds in his journey. He ran his first marathon last October. He's currently days away from his first 50K. He is so inspired by the guests we have on the show, the other viewers of the show, that he took it upon himself to train for the last year plus and is currently in taper mode for his first 50K. We're going to have him on next week's episode to talk a little bit about how it went. There's no doubt in our minds he's going to just absolutely crush it out there. So big shout out to Brian, Rick, and Chris. Thank you guys for the support. Okay. Not only am I here, but I am joined by...
Me, you're right. Let's see.
Mute the microphone.
I was just gonna say, people are requesting that your mic be mute tonight.
Sure.
After the way the show has gotten started,
it's already off to a great start.
As you guys know, I'm Kim Tashima Newberry. I'm here every Monday, and as Chris in the chat room said, this may be Ethan's show, but it's Kim's chat room.
Boom.
Indeed. So we are live, you guys. So if you guys have questions for our wonderful guests, Yassine and Sally, please pop them into the chat room. We'll be pulling them throughout the hour.
Okay, enough of me. More Kim and more of our guests. Without further ado, let me welcome to the show. They've both been on other shows in the past, but never together. No. They recently participated in this incredible foot race known as the Badwater 135. Here they are, without further ado. Yassine Diboun and Sally McRae.
Yay!
Hello!
Hey,
how are
everybody.
you guys?
Thanks for having us back.
Yeah, thank you.
It's nice to have you both together. You're both such wonderful people, full of life, and you do so much for the running community, each in your own way. To bring you both on the show at the same time, I'm like, this is kind of a badass duo here.
Oh my gosh, I love Yassine. And Yassine and I did a lot of the same races together.
Totally.
In fact, it is like when I found out that he got into Badwater, I was so excited because we do quite a few international races. And every time you see a friend from back home, it is the most heartwarming thing. And anybody that knows Yassine, his smile and grace and kindness that he gives to everybody is always so heartwarming. So it's kind of like calming, because there's so many race jitters like before a race, and then you see Yassine walk through this crowd and it's like, yay!
I could say the same thing about you, Sally. It's
good
awesome.
Race memories, yeah.
Definitely. And it was so cool that we were able to share the first few miles of Badwater together.
Yeah.
Just hooting and hollering around.
Easy miles, just laughing, totally ignoring the heat.
Yeah, ignoring the 115 degrees.
Thinking it was cool out
just
when really our organs were melting.
Not really this hot. Like, we're having a great time.
Yeah.
I like that it's I like that it's 115 degrees and you guys are like, this is easy. Like, that's what's crazy.
It was.
Well,
it
it was
like
weird. We felt like we were jogging. I mean, we were so tapered and like well tuned, but at the same time, you're running through an oven, and you're like, wait a minute, we're jogging, and we were in like the first couple slots of our wave, right?
Yeah.
And it didn't feel like we were pushing hard at
Not
all.
at all. No, I thought we were just chilling.
Yeah,
But
we were.
Anyway. But then.
It was not chilling at all.
It was the weirdest thing. It was the weirdest thing to be running in 1:15 at 11 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's wild. We have a couple comments already in the chat room just kind of talking about you guys both run. I'm just going to use that comment as a jumping off point. Both running mountain races.
Mm-hmm.
You're both known for running big mountainous races. Why did you choose to run something like Badwater? So let's just start there. Let's talk a little bit about what Badwater is to at least set the stage. Because most people, the conception is that it is flat, but it is not entirely the truth. Is that correct?
Correct. Far from the truth. I mean, it's got 14,000 feet of cumulative gain over 135 miles, but that's kind of 3 mountain passes, right? You start in the lowest point in the United States at Badwater Basin, 282 feet below sea level, and then you make your way to Mount Whitney, which is the highest point in the U.S. at 14,600, I believe. But we go. The race finishes at 8,300. At 8,300 feet, and
Wow.
You go over a few mountain passes.
So there's climbing. It's as much as it's a road race, it's also a road race with a lot of gain in the later miles, I'm assuming.
Yes, and you don't get off the road. You know, you're kind of like looking up at the mountains, especially as mountain runners. This is Yassine and I were both chatting. We're like, this is the first time we've raced a road ultra before, so we're true mountain runners. So to be on the road and you're looking at the Eastern Sierra, longing to be on the trails.
Well, you can see these climbs when you're in the desert, which was so unique. And one of the reasons I wanted to do it, I don't have a lot of desert races under my belt. So I thought this was like a unique way to celebrate my 40th birthday. But you're in the desert and it's so open, and you can see the next pass that you're going to be passing in a few hours, you know, and it's just these optical illusions. I don't know. Did you experience that, Sally, too? Where you can just these long straightaways and you can
and then you're like, is my brain melting or is that really like never ending? But I actually craved the climbs though. I wouldn't say I was like happy, excited when I was climbing, but I was like, that's when I felt the most at home and I felt the strongest was climbing.
It's interesting to, having never run the race and only seen the Badwater Basin from afar, it's really interesting to talk about an event that runs 135 miles, deals with temperatures over 110 degrees easily. I mean, I know that it topped out at like 126 or 27 degrees, which isn't even the measurement of the heat on the surface of the pavement, which I believe topped 155, 156 degrees Fahrenheit, which is like mind-bendingly bad.
Yeah, my legs are on fire.
Right, my shoes are literally melting. They talk about that, and so I'm curious, like some of the logistics going into an event like this. What is the crewing like? Are there aid stations? What time do you start the race? Like, let's start there too. Yassine, do you kind of remember some of the setup for it?
So Sally and I were both in the same wave, which was 11 p.m.
Is that you say wave? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. This is also something I was curious about. Is there a pro wave, an amateur wave, or do you pick which time? Is it chosen for you?
So there's 3 different waves. I believe it was 8. Was it 8, 9:30, and 11?
And 11, yeah.
PM, okay.
PM, and they usually put, based on your race experiences, I think they usually put the faster people that are projected to be faster at the 11 p.m. wave.
Got it.
If you want to race, they're basically giving you a handicap. And there's no other race that I've ever been to where they do this. In fact, I even had asked Chris, like jokingly, but half seriously, can I start in an earlier wave? And he's like, heck no, because we all have to get it to the first checkpoint at the same time. Nobody. So we get a 3-hour handicap. So it doesn't change anything. So if you want to race it, you get the least amount of time at night to run. So we get so 8 o'clock gets more night hours, more time out of the sun than we do. They get to be the first ones to the general store where you just hope and pray that they're going to save ice for you and your crew. And then, everybody has to get to the first time station by 10 a.m. the next morning. So if you're fast and you want to race, then you get a handicap.
So
and not a lot of
Yassine,
people know that.
that's what I was trying to figure out this time around too, is trying to figure out, well, who's actually in the lead.
Right.
So Yassine, if you wanted to start the 8:30 wave or 8 wave, could you win by, like, if you just happen to, wow, I'm having a great day. Let's say you're an amateur and you're starting the 8:30 wave and you're having a great day and you finish in a cumulative time that is shorter than the person who started in the 11:30 wave. Could you technically be the winner?
Yes.
You could. He tries to find out.
Yeah, he like won a couple years. Like Ferg Hawk actually was in the second wave, and he kind of flew in a little under the radar, and he did really well, and almost beat Scott Jurek, I believe, but I missed him by like 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it could be done. It could be done for sure.
So that's good to know. That at least clarifies some questions for me. And again, if you have questions while you're watching this, viewers, Kim is in the chat room. She's pulling a ton of side. We're going to try to get to as many of these as possible during the main show, but we'll definitely get to some of them during the post show. Do we have any initial questions right off the bat?
We have a lot of questions off the bat. And I guess while we're starting about kind of the prep and that kind of thing for the race, there's a question from Deb Hamberlin in the chat room. Deb asked, question for both. Was this the first time that you have applied to run Badwater, and is the application process competitive?
Good question.
You go first, Yassine. You answer that.
Yes and yes. It was my first time, and it was very, very competitive to get in. And Chris Kosman, out of the gate said that I want to say close to 2,000 people applied for 100 spots. Mm-hmm. Wow. And so he said right out of the gates there was a lot of very good runners that are not in Badwater this year.
Wow.
Yeah, this was my first try, my first attempt, my first really, I guess maybe like the first time I ever in my life have been like, okay, I'm ready to do this race, and I'm gonna apply and see if I get in. And I was actually racing Tarawera when that's when they were announcing who got in. So I got back to my hotel room completely wrecked and found out you are in Badwater. So I was like, half crying, excited, but half crying, why did I do this?
Like, oh my God.
Like literally minutes into recovering from 100-mile win. Like, all right, oh no. Yay.
Yay.
I definitely had those moments too. Many times, like after I got in, I was just like watching YouTube videos and just being like, what did I get myself into? Like seeing like Navy SEALs just like showing up at the finish line, just like a shell of a person, It was definitely the most intimidated I've been by a race out of all of them.
So let's start there. We'll start with Yassine's race, because I know that these are two unique and individual experiences. I think that's important to note of any ultra marathon. But these our guests tonight are two of some of the best on the planet and have attempted some of the hardest ultras out there, right? So that's why I think I want to make sure that people realize that we're going to be talking to two very unique individuals, talented athletes that had very different experiences, some similarities, but also some differences. So Yassine, let's start with you. So you have a fantastic crew of runners. You are about to start what you just said is one of the most intimidating events that you've experienced. What was going through your mind at 11 p.m. at night as you're towing the line to the Badwater?
Well, I really felt confident going in. I kept lying to myself and telling myself that my North African, Moroccan genes were going to come out of me in the desert. And I felt tapered and healthy and ready to go. And I had like you mentioned, I had a great crew behind me, good friends, Willie McBride, Nick Triolo, Jason Eads, and Heather McGrath, all experienced ultra runners. And we went off, and like Sally said, her and I have been to a bunch of different races on the circuit over the years, and then you also get to see a lot of others that show up in a similar circle. So like Mossy and Zach Gingrich and Pam Smith and some of these friends. You're just kind of running along together through the desert, just excited to get it started because there's just so much anticipation. And especially with an 11 p.m. start. I mean, exactly 1 week ago today, I was sitting at a Mexican restaurant in Pahrump, Nevada, just like, come on, let's just get this going. We got to get dinner and then get ready to run at 11 p.m. So once it went off, I felt like very relieved to just get going. The race has started. And like I said, Sally and I were running together with a few others. We're having a great time, chatting it up. And it was 115. We thought it was going to get a little cooler through the night, or at least myself, like the forecast said, in the 90s, at least overnight. And it never got down to 90 ever. I don't think.
Wow.
Maybe right when I dropped, ironically, is like when it dropped just below 100. But it was interesting to just get into the dynamic of the rolling aid station. So it was just like, okay, and Mossy had a different strategy. He had a little Motorola with him, so he would yell to his crew, all right, I'll take some cantaloupe and take some, whatever. At the first stop. And Sally, it was hard to kind of see your crew at nighttime too, so we would kind of yell like, is that you? But yeah, it was kind of the first couple stops were kind of just getting used to the handoffs and the cool downs, the sponge offs and all that stuff.
Yeah, because there's no aid stations. I didn't clarify that earlier, right? So your crew can essentially aid you from step one.
Yes. And so they're just leapfrogging you every like 3 miles or so, depending on. I was doing every 2 to 3 miles, sometimes a little longer, but never usually longer than 4 miles. And I never had a stop where I didn't get like doused down with ice water. And so switching out bottles and giving me fresh, spring energy gels and Tailwind and, whatever I might need. So it was really convenient, actually. In some ways, even though it was so extremely hot, like the fact that you were getting cooled down so often really just helped immensely.
Yeah, there's great videos that we were seeing on social media and stuff. Sally, I know we saw some for you, but they had the garden sprayers. And Yassine, I know your history with garden spray. Like that's
I had a couple of them.
Yeah, I was like, that's Yassine's go-to. If there's anyone that can handle that stuff. So I'm assuming you were using that, your crew was using that, keeping you cool and everything.
At one point, my Heather McGrath was actually running with the garden sprayer with me up Father Crowley and just spraying me the whole time. But I found actually what was most beneficial was just a bucket with ice water and a big sponge. And so, and then wearing the arm sleeves and I had the calf sleeves on and just keeping everything wet as much as possible and cold and wet as much as possible.
So this is interesting because knowing how you race, you do really well in hot weather. I've seen you run at Hurt. You do really, really well. And this scenario seems like it's literally just running and being casual and trying to keep your heart rate down, keep your body cool until something goes wrong. Did you have any signs that things were inevitably heading downhill, or like how was your body reacting to things?
So I felt like I was right where I wanted to be and doing really well, and all the way through about 40, 50 miles. And then I went to go urinate, and it was probably the color of like Coca-Cola. And so that kind of was my first a little bit of a red flag where I was like, whoa, like I've never had that kind of dark brown urine before. So that was a little alarming.
So scary.
It's so scary, It's like, and Sally and I are both very similar in that we're competitive. We push ourselves. We weren't just going to finish it. I think I can speak for Sally. I wasn't just going to finish the race. I was competing in the race. I was pushing myself, and I wanted to like be in the top 5, or those were my goals, and I had time goals, and I knew kind of where I wanted to be by certain times, and I was right there. And then all of a sudden I peed, and it was like Coca-Cola coming out. So that was a little alarming, but I kept pushing in the fluids and the electrolytes, and my crew took care of me. I was eating lots of fruit, and eventually I got it back to clear. So that was good.
Okay. Yeah, because my first instinct is rhabdo, like it's some sort of kidney issue when it gets that dark. I mean, just based off what I've read and stuff like that. Okay, so you did manage to get it back to.
I did. I was real thankful. My crew was really, they were awesome. They were getting on me, and they were just like, "You need to keep drinking." I'm like, "I'm drinking so much, my stomach hurts," you know. And that's the thing. I mean, Sally probably experienced this too. It's like you have to drink so much out there, and you don't realize how much you have to drink because you're constantly wet.
Yeah.
And it's well over 100 degrees. It's not like it's like 105. I mean, it was like 120. You know, there was 125 going up Father Crowley for me. I mean, that's next level. I have not raced in that kind of heat. I mean, the hottest race I've been in was Western States, and that was like peaked out at like 108, and that was only there for, you weren't running at that for that long either. You know.
Wow.
Right.
So
sorry,
this was a new kind of extreme for me.
I can't even just even as you're describing that, I'm realizing it's still night, if not morning, at this point, and the temperatures are still this high. It's ridiculous. It's crazy to think.
Yeah.
We are live. We do have lots of live questions. I want to get to some of these for Yassine here while we move in to the next part of the story.
Yeah.
Fire away.
Yeah. Marie Claude in the chat room asked, being such an extreme condition race, was there a cue that you set to tell you to quit the race? For example, if X happens, I will stop the race to prevent long-term damage.
That's a good question. Did either of you, I guess, have that? This is the line that I don't want to go past.
I did. My family, multiple family members, you know, when I would announce that I was doing this, and as I got closer, they were just like, "Don't do anything stupid out there. Please promise me if something starts going like if something dangerous has happened, that you're not going to hurt yourself." You know, and I really kind of had that in the back of my mind, and I really wanted to uphold that promise that I made too, not just for them, but for myself. I mean, there's no point of pushing yourself so hard to the point where you damage yourself and you can't potentially do what you love anymore. So.
Sally?
Yeah, you know, I totally resonate with what Yassine is saying too. You know, especially when you're a parent, that's always in the back of your head, because you not only want to be an inspiration to them, but you also want to show them like we are human and we are not perfect, and you know, we have to respect the fact that we're not, as much as we want to be superheroes, that we're going to put ourselves in situations that are dangerous, and we have to do what is best for us. And I often joke, like, my children have kept me alive because if I wasn't a parent, I would have done something really crazy and not be here anymore. But but no, I typically don't, like, before I go into a race, I just don't think of those things. I don't, I don't think about, well, then if this happens. It's always when I encounter it. And it has to be, like what Yassine is saying, it has to be super serious, because, we both have pushed through some super gnarly things in races. My first 100, I finished on a fractured leg. I would never recommend that, but it's so individual. And so I also want to say that I don't ever shame or judge anybody for the reasons that they drop out. You know, for some people, it's really scary throwing up. Like, that is so frightening. And it's like, I threw up, my race is over. And you know what? Sometimes it just takes racing again and again and again to realize and really learn about your body and really what it's doing, and really learn what you're capable of. There's so much that we as humans are trying to convince ourselves that we're strong enough, that no, we can do this. And you know what? Take your time. Like, there's so much grace and so much in that. And I talk to people every single week that ask me this question, like, well, how do you know when you're supposed to quit? And how do you know when it's too much or it's too hard? And I really think it's individual. And when I look back at my life, I realize, well, I've been pushing through some pretty gnarly things since I was a little kid. And so I learned things and have continued to learn as I've gotten older. But I really value life too. And I think that there are some things that I've pushed through that I never thought I could, that were so painful. And other times where I've been like, you know what? I just need to take care of myself. Like I could crawl to the finish line, but I don't want to. Like I'm so sick, and I'm actually going to take a break and stop beating myself up and thinking that I need to be, you know, a slave to never say die. Like that's what it's about. It's that doesn't make somebody strong. Sometimes being strong is strong enough to walk away and realize that we have thousands of finish lines to cross. There's only one finish line, really. And that these are just checkpoints, really, in our racing. Like, this is where we check in, see where we are, we learn something about ourselves, and then we move on to the next race. And especially as professional runners, that's really what we're doing. We're trying to get better. And sometimes we make it to the finish line, and sometimes we don't.
Yeah, I think that was very well articulated. And, you know, I've definitely been able to just grind it out. And I feel like I have a pretty high tolerance for, you know, discomfort and things like that. But
you totally
I don't know. For me, when I just started messing with like internal organs and systems, throwing like major red flags at me, that was kind of the deal breaker for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's start talking about that, Yassine, because I know, based off of kind of what you've been talking about, you are now at mile 50, 60, and obviously your body is throwing a symptom at you, but you remedied that symptom.
Yes.
So then kind of how does it play out from there? What's the next step? What happens?
So then we went across the Panamint Springs Valley, and I still felt really good of where I was at. It was the hottest part of the day.
What time?
And we probably like midday.
Wow.
Midday in the Panamint Springs Valley. And we were approaching Father Crowley climb, which was, I don't know, one of the toughest climbs of the race. There's several. I didn't do the last one. But anyway, so this is where I got caught by Pam Smith. And Pam's a good friend of mine, fellow Oregonian, and her and I have a past of really like duking it out. We duked it out at Western States one year, and we just were kind of playing cat and mouse, and we moved ourselves both up into the top 10. And we're both very competitive, and we like to push ourselves. And she's very good in the heat as well. So she caught me right at, what was that aid station there? Was that Stovepipe?
Yeah,
right
Stovepipe Well. It was like 41.
Stovepipe. Yeah, so Stovepipe Wells. She had just caught me, and we both sat down to tend to our feet. Her crew had brought a pizza out for her.
What?
And I know. I was like, well, I kind of looked at that, and I was like, oh, she's sitting down to have pizza. I'm gonna actually get out of here. So I changed my socks, and Dry Max socks were awesome. I had these hyper thin socks on, but I was feeling a hot spot coming on, so I threw some lube on, changed my socks, got out of there. I saw her eating pizza, and I just started hiking that climb, and it was hot. I mean, my crew said that our van registered 125 on a section of Father Crowley, which was the hottest that they registered in the van during the whole race. But she ended up catching me an hour later, maybe, and I was just so impressed, and she pulled past me. And after she got past me a little ways, I just started feeling like really strong, and Heather was with me, and I just started running the uphills. And I was just like, and like Sally said, like you kind of look forward to maybe like using different muscle groups and like changing it up and like climbing. And, you know, we're all mountain runners, so we're good climbers. And I saw Pam was just hiking, so I just started running the uphills, and it felt good. Just like different muscle groups.
One second, Yassine, sorry. I think the audio is just getting a little crackly. Sally, can you talk for a second?
1, 2, 1, 2.
Yeah, you're good. Yassine, go ahead and talk again.
Yeah, so I just started running.
Totally
I just started running, and I just started like reeling her in, and I didn't feel like I was overexerting, and I passed her, and then I just was like, well, now I'm just gonna put a gap on her, and I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. You know, it's like sitting down at the card tables in Vegas. You know, you just get a little bit greedy sometimes, and I just was like, I kept pushing a little bit more, and I think in hindsight, that's where I made a mistake. Is I maybe pushed a little bit too much on that Father Crowley climb. So we kind of battled it out for the next couple hours, and I finally made it to Darwin, which is at mile 90. And I don't know if you experienced this, Sally, but these fighter jets were coming through.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
They do that for the Badwater race. They fly so low across the basin.
They come around the mountain and they're like cocked sideways and they come right over top of you. Like it's so intense.
It's so intense.
Happy 100
like
miles.
Yeah, it's just this surreal experience of like you're at mile 90 something, you're at Death Valley, and then all of a sudden there's like a fighter jet flying right at you.
Wow.
Like so low. Anyway, so we're racing, and I'm starting to definitely feel it, and I'm feeling some of these red flags like I'd mentioned before, where I was trying to tell my crew what it felt like. It felt like I was kind of like idling high, and I was getting these fleeting pains in the kidneys. And then I started to pee brown, really dark brown again. Okay. And I just was so frustrated, and I was just it was just a culmination and a combination of many different, I had some irregular heartbeats that were kind of throwing me for messing me up mentally. And so I just kept walking, and starting at 11 p.m. too, I was getting very sleep deprived. So I was walking, and I was like just closing my eyes and like walking off the road.
I was doing that too.
Yeah. I would close my eyes and just walk right off the road into the gravel, and they'd be like, "Oh, I was just sleepwalking there." Okay. So like from miles like 95 to 100, like every couple miles, I stopped in the van and just like slept for 5 minutes. I would just like, hey, I'm just going to sleep for 5 minutes. And I would lay down in the back seat. As soon as I laid down, I fell asleep. I'd wake up, drink a Coke or eat an Otter Pop, and then like run another 2-3 miles. But then those symptoms kept rearing its head. And eventually I got to mile 100, and that's when I really just kind of like quicksand was all around me. I mean, I was at this spot where I just like I couldn't imagine going on, and I couldn't imagine dropping out. It was a horrible place to be.
It's so heartbreaking.
Yeah, it was really overwhelming, and just everything that I put into it, and all my friends being there, and we just kind of went over our options. I definitely had some very level-headed friends, and they said, well, let's not call it 100%. Like we can go to the medics and Lone Pine and get checked out, and you have such a cushion that you could come back and get back in the race. And so they give you a stake with your number on it. It's a wooden stake to put in the road if you need to leave. If you need to leave, you can come back to that stake and then start. So that was the plan. We said, all right, let's go. So we staked out, and we drove down to Lone Pine and went to the medic, and they checked all my vitals, and they gave me some electrolyte drink. And once I fell asleep and woke up, I just kind of assessed everything, and was just like I was cooked, and my body was destroyed, and I just couldn't really imagine getting back out there. And like, yeah, I probably could have like ran my way to the finish and like barely under the race cutoff, but I just wasn't, like Sally was saying, I just wasn't really there for that, to like slog it all the way and put everybody through another like anguishly long, thing. I mean, everybody was sleep deprived and tired and overheated.
It's hard for the whole team.
It really is. So it was a very tough decision, but and I think whenever you drop out from races, there's always this like hindsight like thought of like, man, I should have just kept on walking like slowly, and like maybe my system would have came back around. And I think it's so easy to look at it in reverse, but when you're in that moment and you're surrounded by quicksand, and you have to make a decision. Yeah, and I always think DNFs are good, to know the feeling after a race when you DNF, to know the hollow kind of depressed feeling you have, to remind you when you're thinking of dropping out. I think it's definitely good to have in your toolbox.
Yeah, so true. Yeah,
it's interesting to hear this, and I know that like again, Yassine, it's not like you haven't suffered through races before. I've been a fan of yours for so long. I've seen you crush, and I've seen you slog, and I've seen you finish just to finish, because it's a big event or that sort of thing. And I know I can only imagine what was going through your mind at this event. And you bring up the crew. We'll get to some live questions here, but you bring up the crew aspect of it, and I think that's one thing I realized just kind of in your describing it, and also thinking through stories we've heard before. The crew, it seems like the crew is part of this race with you so much more so than other events, because they are with you every step. It's not like, we'll go wait at the next aid station and sit in a chair and sleep or whatever.
Totally.
They're with you pretty much the entire time, right?
I love it for that. I thought it was such a bonding experience. I had like close friends with me, and we all had some great, don't get me wrong, it wasn't like it was this like torture, inferno fest where you're just suffering the whole time. We had some great times out there. We laughed, we joked. Nick and I had a beautiful sunset over the Sierras, and some really unforgettable moments out there, and a bonding trip that we'll never forget, just pre and post race. Just those last 35 miles of the race weren't meant for me, I guess, this year.
Well, you didn't want to do those last 35 anyways. It sounds like it was really hot. There was a lot of climbing, some Mount Whitney thing in the way. Well, listen, man, it's heartbreaking to hear that you had to make that decision. It sounds like it was the correct decision based off the physiological symptoms.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, I really do. And I appreciate all the messages from, friends on, social media and whatnot. It just reaffirms and it makes me feel better. And I have to remind myself that it was the right decision. And I will say that firsthand, that race is so tough. And congratulations to Sally and to every other person that willed their way up Mount Whitney Portal. Like, that race is no joke. You think going in, world's toughest foot race, and you wonder, is it marketing or is it hyped up or this and that? And I'm here personally to tell you my opinion. It's the hardest race that I've done. Just the combination of the heat and and everything else. It's no joke.
Yeah, and record highs this year too. Like highest dropout rate, highest temperature. It just sounds like it was the year. Live questions, and then we're going to talk to Sally a bit about her experience as well.
Yeah, I've talked long enough. Yes.
I could listen to you. Seriously, I want this show to be. I wanted to sit here and hear all your stories, because I know both of you have tons of them. Let's get to the live question.
Yeah, there's a question from Jennifer in the chat room for Yassine. Jennifer asked, "Did you somewhat hope the medics were going to make the decision for you? Did they provide any warning against going back?"
Maybe, I don't know. I kind of, as runners, I think we all know our bodies so well, and we know when something's not quite right, or when there's something like, okay, like I'm just low, I haven't eaten, or I'm low blood sugar, or I'm, experiencing some muscle fatigue or whatever it may be. But they gave me some stuff, and they said, they basically said, you're fine, your vitals are fine. So they never gave me one way or the other. So I think it was just like the ball was like left in my court, really.
Let's get to one more live question.
Yeah, and question from Marissa. Marissa asked, what do you do to turn off your mind when you're in the thick of it? What motivates you in those tough moments?
I volunteer at a lot of aid stations here in the Pacific Northwest, and one of the things I constantly remind myself or remind others is that our lives are so good that we have to pay to put ourselves in these situations. And so that's one of the things I always say is like to feed the good wolf. And so I try to just come from a place of gratitude and like, this is uncomfortable, or this is not going well, but just keep going. It'll get better, and try to kind of just push it away and focus on something else.
Yeah, I know you, and you talk a lot about feeding the good wolf and talking about gratitude, and I love that. And I know you have that painting behind you, and every time I see that, it always makes you think of that phrase that you talk about.
That's why it's there.
Good wolf. Yeah, man. So Sally was also out there. running some
a lot longer than
running some gnarly miles in the hot heat. Sally, let's talk a little about your experience. I'm really curious. Just how was this race for you approaching it? Talking about towing that start line and stuff. Like when we talked with Yassine about it, is this event daunting to you, and how did it feel for those first 30, 40, 50 miles that you're running Badwater?
Yeah. Before I jump in, I just again want to reiterate just really quick to Yassine, because I know a lot of people watching this and listening have so many questions about Badwater, and it is kind of a mysterious race because it is very hard to cover because there's no coverage out there, and even with satellites, it's really difficult. And I think that just being and so many of our greatest legends in our sport have DNF'd several times at this race. So Yassine, just to hear your story and what you pushed through and having to make that hard decision, I'm just, as your friend, just so proud of you. And I'm still really raw from my race, so I'm getting a little emotional just listening to you, because it was a very heartbreaking day for me. And I think that we had a lot of similar feelings going into the race and goals and just the whole heart, that we put into it. I mean, you and I were at Tarawera together, and, you just the dreaming that goes on. And as a professional, it isn't, when I sit down to write a goal for my A race of the year, it isn't, I hope I get to the finish line. That's not this is my job. So I don't train every day hoping I get to the finish line. It's, I want to be the absolute best. I want to do great things out there. I want to break a course record. I want to win. I want to be at the top of that podium. It's dream big, aim high, always. Why not? That's how great things happen. It isn't, I really hope that I get 7th place. That's not what I trained for. And so I think what I did take away from this race overall, and I think that Yassine, you and I are still kind of, regurgitating a lot of it. Mm-hmm. And you said it earlier, is just, you remember the feelings, you remember how your body felt when it was so broken. And you also remember just how hard you fought. And there's not a lot of moments in our life where we get to feel that. And sometimes when we do, it's moments in our life that we don't want, or it's maybe in our last moments. And so the fact that you got to be in such an extreme situation and feel how strong you are and see a team around you and stand at one of the toughest races in the world. I mean, I want to give you a big hug and just say that we're really lucky for what we get to do. Yeah. And you show the world what a human being is capable of doing. And, you're so gracious that, we're continuing on, right? We keep moving forward. So
totally. Thank you so much for those words.
Yeah, I'm proud of you, friend.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, everyone. This is the first time I've seen Yassine since I kept quiet because I know I'm the same way. It's you don't attack someone the day after, what happened, bro? It's they need that peace bubble. So.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sally. That means a lot to me. Appreciate that.
For sure.
I'm really sorry for texting you the next day, Yassine, saying what happened, bro? I feel terrible.
Ethan, man, come on, dude. I'm joking.
Ethan.
No, I mean, all these people care, right? But it's the texts sit on your phone for days. You're I think. No.
Sorry, Sally. Before we move forward, I have no problem with this show no longer being about anything other than just letting you two know how amazing you both are, and just seeing the dynamic there is I can't help but point out that is ultra running. That is the kindness and the support that we have for one another. I think it's beautiful. And as much as listen, Yassine, of course we're heartbroken that you had to make that decision, knowing what you just told us regarding the physiological symptoms. I know for a fact, man, that I would have bailed at like mile 5. I mean, I think any normal human would have bailed early. Like, oh man, the sun went down. I'm done. Like, I haven't even started. I'm done. But I want you to know that Sally obviously is supportive of you. Kim and I are in support of you. Every viewer who's watching right now, same thing. And you're an amazing human. Both of you guys are amazing humans. And
I love you guys, and I appreciate all that. It really means a lot, and it makes me feel good.
Everyone online, group hug. We're group hugging right now.
Internet hugging. Yeah. You guys, our screen is the way it's. Yeah, what's up? And I really am sorry for texting you the next day, like, dude, what happened, bro? I didn't.
No, you didn't.
I knew Yassine needed.
I got it anyway.
Yeah.
Alley, you know.
Sorry, I keep moving. I feel like I'm like in this dark, like, okay. I'm trying to get
desert.
Let's talk about Sally's awesome race and how she actually got herself up to the portal there.
Okay, there's light. Okay.
All right, Sally. So,
yes.
You obviously you were running with Yassine for a little bit. So you guys, I guess, let me ask this question too. Were you guys able to get updates on each other's experiences? So, like Yassine, were you getting updates about other runners? And Sally, were you getting updates like on Yassine or any of that kind of stuff?
Oh my gosh! Well, my tracker was broken for like 50 miles, so
mine too. Mine too.
Chris literally drove up. Chris, the RD, drives up next to me at mile 50. He's like, are you number 77? I think your tracker's broken. Everyone's saying your tracker's broken. I'm like, oh my gosh, no. So he's like, keep running. So I'm like running and he's trying to fix it on my arm.
Oh.
But you know what? Overall, it was next to impossible. Like I kept asking my crew over and over again, like, what's happening? And the only thing you know are the immediate cars by you.
Gotcha.
But then the other thing is that if you are allowed to climb inside your car. If you need treatment or if you need to sit down, if you're overheating, which most people do, they'll sit inside the car for a few minutes. So you could pass a car thinking that the runner is a couple miles ahead, 2 miles behind, but that runner could have been sitting in the car for 3 hours and you don't know it. So it's kind of tricky. And everyone out there is competitive. I mean, it is a rigorous application process just to get in. So, you're dealing with people that everyone wants to finish strong. Everyone believes they can get to that finish line, and everyone wants a great advantage to get there. And so, it's interesting once the race begins. Like you see crews just checking out each other's crews, and you see crew, after run, you see crews looking at you, and they're talking about how you look, and and sometimes they'll say things like, "So you feeling okay? You need anything?"
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, it's kind of it was hard to get updates because of the coverage, the no cell coverage, all that stuff. And then like when you would finally get updated, it'd be like 4 hours old, so. You're just kind of racing blindly, really.
So how did the race unfold for you then? You're talking about, keeping the pace fairly moderate early on and just feeling the night temperatures and stuff like that. How did it unfold for you, Sally?
I was so excited at the start line. I mean, I did quite a bit of heat training. I like Yassine. I love the heat. I do well in the heat. I was excited about the heat. I've always felt like that's been an advantage for me in races, is just bring on the heat. And, every year I did Western States, I was like, I hope it's hotter, It's just like, that's my jam. Now, cold, not the same in the cold. But this, like, I got out there and, like, my crew put ice in my sports bra, ice in my arm sleeves, ice bandana. Like, I was totally wet. So, like, I felt great. Like, I was just, that gun went off and I shot off that start line, and I was going, I'm looking at my watch, I'm like 8:30 pace, 8:40 pace, like super easy. And like Yassine said, like we're running together, we're chatting. And that was one thing too. I was like, if I can just talk and laugh, and every time I see my crew is just really chill, relax. This is like, I'm doing great. Like this is easy running right here. And it's road. Like it's just, we're moving along on the road really well. And I had a lot of just natural confidence, knowing the kind of training that my coach had put me through is the hardest training I've ever done in my life, and the most road running I've ever done in my life.
Right.
So I felt at home. Like I felt great. And I don't know what I still don't really know the exact thing what happened. The only thing that I can pinpoint was it was 115 out, and I thought 8:30 pace was like super easy. I felt fine. I never felt hot. But then there was a point where like my crew was kind of like, gosh, you're moving kind of fast, Sally. And they were a little concerned about me overheating. And I was like, I'm not. Like, I feel amazing. And then all of a sudden, like, everything started cramping. It was like 30-ish miles in. Like, I had like intestinal cramping. So I knew like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get diarrhea here. So I kept on telling the car, like, wait, only drive up half a mile. I might poop my pants.
Oh, God.
Like, okay, no, I'm totally fine. Like, I'm good. Go, let's go. Like, and so like every like half mile to a mile, I was like, oh my gosh, my intestines. And then my adductors, which is like the insides of your legs or the insides of your quads, just seized up. It like the worst way I've never felt this kind of pain in my life. And the thing about your adductors is like they never stop firing. Like they don't turn off. There's no like with your IT band, like the other side, you can like change your running gait, you can shorten your stride, you can kind of do something to get into like a more comfortable position. But adductors, like you're walking, you're jogging, you're running, it is so painful. And I immediately was like, no, wait, like, don't, no, the legs can't go, the intestines can't go. Like, and then I was nauseous and I hadn't even made it to Stovepipe, which is mile 41. And I start telling my crew, I was like, I don't know what's going on. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to slow down. I'm going to start power hiking. So I just knew like, stay level headed. We're going to work through this. It's still early in the race and we're staying positive. And so I started power hiking, even though I was like, I felt great. Like I felt strong. I wasn't tired. I wasn't breathing hard. I wasn't hot. I was like, I'm going to power hike. So I'd power hike and that's when like the other crews would be like, you okay, Sally? Doing okay over there?
Right.
Got a long day ahead. You know,
totally.
I'm dying inside. But I just committed to that. So I started kind of shuffling and slowly I started to see the stovepipe wells. It's where you want to make it first. And it was like the first like true time station and there's bathrooms there and gas stations. And so I get there and I immediately went into the bathroom and I come out to my crew and I'm like, guys, like I can't run without excruciating pain. And everything is starting to lock up. Then my calves started locking up. The fronts of my shins started locking up. It was like different things were seizing at different times. And so at that time, I was allowed to have a pacer. So I had Colin, Dave, who've always crewed and paced me at Western States, Kristen, Colin's wife, and then Rafal, who's the creator of Spring Energy. So they're a great team. Kristen works at a hospital. Rafal's a sports nutrition scientist. Like my team was so badass. They were like, all right, like we're going to look at your body. We're going to look at your nutrition and hydration. We're going to take care of this. So we just committed to climbing out of stovepipe slow. And, you know, I was really still stubborn at that time. Like I was not going to accept how I was feeling. Like I still very much wanted to race. I wanted to do really well at this race. And I was like, all right, like I can push through this. I'm going to be okay. Like we still need to run. And I turned and looked at Dave. I was like, Dave, we have to move. Like we cannot power hike this whole thing. I trained to run up this thing. And it just didn't happen. You know, he'd say, all right, let's run. And it was like, right, left, right, each leg coming down so heavy. And every step hurt. Every step was just painful. And I think what was then difficult from 41 to about 55 was just trying to like, what do I focus on first? Because I'm dry heaving. I probably dry heaved hundreds of times. And every time I'd dry heave, when Rafal was pacing me, he'd be like, you need to drink. So I'm dry heaving and then trying to suck down water. And then he'd give me a Spring Energy and we would argue. Like I'd argue with him so much. Like, Rafal, I want to vomit. Like, I don't want anything. He's like, you need to eat. So I'm taking back all of these springs, drinking water and dry heaving. And he'd be like, no dry heaving, drink. So we're like arguing all the way up the climb for 17 miles. It was with Dave and Rafal. It was a lot of arguing and a lot of literally like wrestling. Like they'd be like, Sally, when was the last time you had a gel? 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Nope, you said that 20 minutes ago. Eat your gel.
I had that same conversation.
I was like I was not pleasant, and I was just mad. I had a lot of passion in me, but I was mad at how I was feeling. And I remember I don't know about Yassine, Yassine, I think you're probably well past me, but like we had to get to the aid station by 11 a.m. and it was 10:21 when we got to mile 51, the cutoff. And I'm looking at Dave. I'm like, I can't believe I'm within 40 minutes of the cutoff. Like, how in the world? Like, this never happened to me. Like, I was so angry. Like, this is just not the way that I'm wanting this to be. And so
welcome,
it was just kind of
welcome to the normal runners world.
Welcome to fighting cutoffs.
Sorry, I know that you came there to win. I realize that.
Yes. But still, it was just, but it was, everything I was feeling was probably every nightmare. Like, what is every worst situation? Okay, that's what's happening right now in a very short amount of time. Oof. And we get to the very top of the climb, and I don't remember a lot of what went on, like in that last mile, but I do remember Rafal putting me in the car. They later told me that Rafal then tried to find my pulse and had a hard time finding my pulse. So then Colin tried to find my pulse and couldn't find my pulse. So then they brought in Kristen, and she immediately found it. She's like, no, she's okay. And she starts asking me these questions like, do you know where you are? Do you know what we're doing here? And I'm like, yeah, I'm running the most ridiculous race ever. Like, what are we? And she's like, everyone's like, all right, she's going to be okay. She's gonna be okay. But they took the scale out, and I had lost like 9 pounds. Like, I was like, just severely, like, had really bad heat exhaustion. So they kept putting ice packs all over me, trying to cool me down. So from that point on until about mile 105, they really had to just survey me quite a bit. I had to keep on getting on the scale. They had to keep on putting me in the car for a couple minutes at a time. I was dizzy a lot. I was nauseous the whole race, and my legs were seizing the whole race. And then I think it was about 75 miles in, I was really frustrated at how slow I was moving. And I just had to embrace like this horrible, uncomfortable pain coming from everywhere. I think it's really easy as runners, like when your knee hurts, you can like focus on that and be like, okay, I can wrap my mind around taking another step when this knee is hurting and kind of like change my gait. And but everything was hurting, and there's so many different things happening at once, and the cramps were coming when I didn't know. I was so out of control. I couldn't control anything. And I was like, this is another like nightmare, especially for me, because it's like, I want to be in control. I want to know that I can handle this and I can grit through this. But it's like, I don't even know what else is going to hit me right now. Yeah. It's like nothing is going well. So I then like finally just let go. And I knew that was what I needed to do hours and hours and hours ago, was just let go and be like, all right, Sally, 1, you're probably not going to win this race. 2, I had, and this is a question I asked myself quite a bit, and it's just like, will you or will you not perform? Can you or can you not perform? And it's just like letting go of feelings and the truth. And that is one of the best things that I know to do when things get really hard, is to cling to truth and not feelings. And I know that I hurt. I know that my whole crew, like, they're sick and tired of hearing that. Like, and they can't feel what I'm feeling. They can't climb inside my body and feel like how terrible I feel right now. But they do know what I had told them at the beginning. That was, don't coddle me. Don't feel sorry for me. Get me to the finish no matter what. And that is what they were doing. And so when my pacers came out and they're like, Sally, we have to run, it wasn't, I couldn't just say, but do you know how bad I feel right now? Like, I want to vomit and like my legs don't move. It was just, I just had to respond and say, okay, like, we'll do this. And maybe with a little bit of tears there and a lot of pain, but we moved along, and it wasn't at the pace that I I knew I was capable of doing. It wasn't in a way that I dreamed it to be. And to be honest, it wasn't anything that I dreamed it to be. But I will say what astounded me the most was going back and realizing every time I looked across the road and saw my crew there, I realized that every person in that car was a parent, and all of them work pretty tough jobs and have a lot of responsibility. And they left all of that for 5 days to drive at 1 mile an hour for 135 miles through the hottest place
on earth.
Planet, and hopefully help me get to that finish line, to stay strong for me, to stay positive for me. And that just, it really rejuvenated me. It really allowed me to kind of take my eyes off of myself, because that's really what I needed to do. I needed to stop wallowing in how horrific I was feeling, because I wasn't where Yassine was. Like thankfully my kidneys were okay. And so that's really because Rafal was literally shoving water down my throat. I'd literally be like, he's like, drink. I'm like dry heaving drinking. But I was able to move. And so it just, as we got to Lone Pine and I looked up at that mountain, and I remember going out to that mountain and doing hill repeats on it. And I remember when I was doing hill repeats in my training, thinking, I'm going to run up this mountain. Like, I'm going to conquer, like, this is my mountain. Like, I'm a mountain runner. I'm one of the only mountain runners doing this race. Like, this is what I do, man. Like, just the feeling, like, I remember getting chills even when I was doing that workout. I envisioned the race, envisioned those steps. And when Rafal and I hit that portal, we started running. And I got goosebumps again, and tears just, I'm going to start crying, but it was just, it's like I didn't have any strength. I had nothing, and I was in so much pain, but I was still able to run, and I knew it was because they were there supporting me, and because I remembered all the people who followed my journey along the way. And it's the people who follow my journey aren't always runners. It's people that have great struggles in their life. It's people that say, man, if I could just run 1 mile, I'd be so happy. If I could just get over this sickness, or, if my legs worked the way I wanted them to. And, realizing that that is so much about what my journey as a runner is. It isn't always about being on the top of a podium, because I know what that feels like, and those feelings are fleeting. But to be able to send a message to people through my running and say, we can still move forward, even when it isn't the dream days, even if it isn't what we expect it to be. It's actually everything that we needed at that time. And I think I grew a lot as a runner in that very short time in the desert. I think I was humbled greatly.
That place is humbling, for sure.
And I realized just what a great community we have, and the people that have loved and support me this whole time. And crossing that finish line, I think, will forever change me as a runner. So, sorry.
That was awesome.
There's no...
Very well said.
Yeah, don't apologize. We've done this show hundreds of times with different guests, and it never fails to hear a story like this from both of you guys and from our guests in the past, and like to hear what people overcome in their own minds and in their own bodies to accomplish things that they deem impossible, or when you face something like this where things aren't going your way, and how you deal with that. Your body is fighting you. Your body is literally failing, and you save your own life, Yassine. Like, you don't know what could have happened. And Sally, you face it head on too, and the results are different, but it by no means is it different how it affected either of you. Like, you'll leave this experience with a profound knowledge of yourself, of your body, of what you're capable of doing, of challenges that you want to take on in the future. And it's amazing how the hundreds of episodes that we've done, I still can't get enough of sitting here and listening to stories like this and get inspiration from it, because I know how much both of you trained for this. I've been following along. I mean, literally, I've been traveling to your cities and following you guys in cars. I know Yassine ran along a freeway up Mount Hood, and like I know this because he talked about it, and his friends also were like expressing concern. Like, I saw Yassine running along a highway wearing long pants and a sweatshirt, and I don't trust him. And I know, Sally, you trained your ass off, like doing repeats on Mount Whitney. There are zero humans who would do this normally.
Well, I wanted to say something too, because I saw a statistic that was thrown out after Badwater, and it just talked about the number of people that have summited Mount Everest, and then it gave a stat line about the number of people that have finished Badwater 135, and it's not that many. And I wanted to be one of those finishers. It wasn't meant to be this year, but Sally, you did it, and that is amazing. It doesn't matter if it was several hours slower than you wanted to do it, or if it was seventh place. Seventh place is still amazing. But our perception gets skewed sometimes. It gets skewed. You're out there doing what 0.00 whatever percent of people on earth do, and you're finishing in the top 10. You're finishing, period. And it's hard to get into our circles, into our competitiveness, and to forget those things sometimes.
I want to commend both of you. I know that Yassine, you didn't get it this time round, and Sally, I know that you worked your ass off and you did.
Yeah.
And you're holding one of the few buckles that are in existence, and I have to commend both of you, because even just towing the line of this event on this year in these temperatures amongst this field, it took a lot more than 99.9% of the population has. So I need to commend both of you, obviously, for just trying, because you're doing it when a lot of people can't. We have so many live questions. We are going to do a post show with these two guests. We'll keep them as long as they have available, but I know that we're also going a little bit longer on the show, but we'll get to a lot of these questions in the post show. Yeah. I think one of the biggest questions that came through from many people was if you would even attempt it again. So I want to make this a 3-part question, and let's see if we can.
That's a lot of parts.
That is a lot of parts. The first 2 parts are like 1 part, and then the last part's that question. I want to know, what is something that you learned about yourself, taking from this experience? What is something that you learned about yourself that maybe you didn't realize? So we'll start with that. That's part 1. Part. We'll just do 2 parts.
You start.
Hold on. We'll do 2 parts, and then the second part is, would you attempt it again? So yes. Okay. What did you learn about yourself, and would you attempt it again? Yassine, let's start with you, man.
Well, I mean, I kind of already knew this, but I was reminded of this while I was out there, and just about how many people I have in my life that I love, that love me, and how important I am to my family, and to be available and present. But it really I kind of threw it out there with that Kara Goucher quote recently about, it's in these moments of time where you just feel this gratitude, something along those lines. And I think that's just what I felt like out there in that moment, was like just the love of the community and my family and friends. And I don't need to put myself in danger to prove anything. And to answer your second part of the question is, would I do it again? I've learned to never say never in the sport, but this was kind of a big splurge for me. It was a lot of resources, a lot of money, and it was kind of viewed and sold as like a one-time thing, as my 40th. And, my wife said that to me before I left. She's like, go down there, have a great race, do your thing, and let's not make this an annual thing. And I can totally relate with that. And I was texting with Sally earlier today, and I did tell her that I want to go back potentially this year, if I can swing it, or soon, to finish off what I didn't get. And I want to start where I dropped at mile 100 and run to Lone Pine, and maybe stay overnight in Lone Pine. And then the next day go from Lone Pine to the portal, And then if weather conditions, are okay, then the next day I'd like to summit Mount Whitney. And, outside of the race, outside of a sanctioned race or anything like that. But as far as racing it again, I'd be lying if I said that there wasn't a part of me that wants to do it, to attempt it again and learn from what I now know. Even after I said I'm not going to do hurt anymore, after I did it 3 times, there's a part of me that I want to do hurt again. That's part of that. But I said I'll never do it again. So those are my answers to those questions.
That's great, man. Sally, what about you?
Gosh, I learned a couple things in this race. I definitely learned how prideful I am. I think and that's a lesson I think I'm always going to learn for the rest of my life. I can be really prideful and make things more difficult because I don't want to let go of how I think something should be, or how, or maybe, in my mind, it was like, I don't think anybody could have trained harder than I did. And so don't I deserve to have a great day out there? Don't I want to see that come to fruition in this race? And, I'm always learning that. I'm always learning that more often than not, things aren't the way that we expect them to be. But many times, how things turn out are exactly what I need and in order to grow. And so it just was a good reminder of, there's still always work to do, and that I always, need to be excited about the growth and the things I learned just as much as the triumphs, and appreciate those. Like, that was probably the most humbling lesson. But I don't know if after a race, if I've ever felt so loved, just across the board. I mean, I talked a lot about my crew, and, my husband, my kids showed up at Lone Pine 13 miles before the finish. And we all, with the crew and my kids, we all crossed over together. And then just the overwhelming response from our community, the messages that have come in, it is just, I've never just felt so loved. I mean, I've laid on my bed so many times resting, just in tears at the things that people would write. And just my dear family and friends, just the way that they have come around me I'm just so grateful for it. And I know, I talk to people all the time that don't have support. They don't have people, and, or maybe they just have one person. And I can't help but be just so overwhelmed with that gratitude. And I want that for everyone too. And so, I'm just in this true state of gratefulness right now for both the good and the bad side of it. Like, I think I needed all of it. And as far as returning to it, I'm focusing on UTMB right now, which is 4 weeks away. It's so crazy to think of, but I need to just focus on that race.
Yassine's eyes
Yassine's
are classic.
I can't even still walk down the stairs.
I'm so grateful to have finished Badwater without injury and feeling good. And so right now I have to kind of just be in that state again. I have to go right into now wrapping my mind around this massive mountain race. And so I think I'll make the decision with my coach, and after some time in prayer and reflection, just to kind of think about if I'll go back, because like Yassine said, it's not just, I'll go back and jump on the start line. I need a whole team of people again that are going to agree to commit to that. And I need to make sure that that's the kind of training that, and the race that I really want to do. There's definitely the immediate side of me that's like, I want to go and have an amazing performance out there. I want to go and do it again. But maybe that is all that I was supposed to be out there for, was the experience that I had, and then to move on. So I'll make that decision in a couple months.
Nice. I forgot that UTMB it's weeks away.
Right around the corner, yeah.
And also shout out to Yassine's daughter, Farah. Hi, Farah.
Hi, Farah.
I don't think she can hear us, but yay, Farah's joined us. So before we move into the post show, can you remind people where they can follow you on social media? Because I know that we're going to have residual questions that maybe don't get asked during the post show. So Yassine, where can people find you on social?
Just at Yassine Diboun, my first name, last name, everywhere.
Great. And Sally?
At at Yellow Runner on Instagram is probably the best way to follow me because I post everywhere in there. And I do answer questions. I'll do a Ask Me Anything on the Instagram stories. And then on Twitter, I'm Sally McRae. And then my website, Sally McRae.
Awesome. Our two guests tonight, Yassine Diboun and Sally McRae, attempted the Badwater 135. I mean, what I can only imagine, and it sounds like the worst race on earth rather than just the toughest. It sounds like it definitely took its toll on their bodies, but it's just great to hear the stories. I'm really proud to know both of these individuals. They continue to inspire us and the viewers. And thank you everyone for watching live. We're going to do what we like to do every week, which is move into the post show. So our post show basically features our guests from the main show, but we get to interact with them on a more intimate basis. We have a lot of questions that didn't get asked during the main show. If you would like to join our post show, it's simple. All you got to do is go to patreon.com/thegingerrunner. For as little as $1 a month, you get to join all of our post shows, meet all of our guests, all that good stuff. And I'm going to show these right now. We have finally gotten delivery of the brand new Ginger Runner head wraps. This is version 1. Oh, sorry, you want to hold that? This is version... That. Yeah, nice and flashy and colorful. Version 2, and then we're going to unveil the Patreon-only version in the post show. So if you are a Patreon supporter, we'll see you guys in just a couple of seconds. We'll unveil that new head wrap. Those will be available to all in just a couple of weeks because we are going to do GRL registration, which is a Ginger Runner Global Run. That registration is going to open up this week, so get ready. It'll be open for a couple of weeks registration, and that's going to be prepping for the October 8th, 2018 Ginger Runner Global Run, which is now in its 3rd year. Pretty excited about that. So cool. Once again, post-show begins in just a couple of seconds. Thank you hugely to our guests tonight.
You got this. Close out strong.
We're working on it. Yassine Diboun and Sally McRae, two wonderful athletes who attempted just, I mean, it's the toughest foot race on earth, and from their stories, it sounds worse than that. I probably will not be doing that. I'm going to register next year. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into tonight's show. We'll see you guys next week, and we'll see you in the post show. You got it. Thanks, Yassine. Thanks,
guys.
All right.
Appreciate it.
All right.